Welcome into the In the Money podcast for KeenelandSelect.com. Tom Leach along with Keeneland's Director of Simulcasting, Jim Goodman. We have a couple of stakes races at Churchill Downs to talk about, one in New York, one in California. Of course, the big time for racing is going to be Thanksgiving weekend with that Friday and Saturday after Thanksgiving. A lot of big races. Cigar Mile shaping up is just a fantastic race. But let's get to Churchill, Jim, and we'll start with the seventh race on their card, the Saturday night card, the only night card they have here in the fall meet. And they've got two stakes, the first of which is the Grade 3 Commonwealth Turf for 3-year-olds at a mile and a 16th. And a big field, pretty good betting race, I thought. Who'd you go with?
Yeah, I had a hard time separating the two shippers from Woodbine here, and I went with River 7 and Golden Sabre come out of the same race, but in the same way that you look at a basketball team that we looked at, Kentucky having a lot more upside than Michigan State, hopefully, the other night after losing. But if you bet on them later in the year, you might think Kentucky has more room to improve. And I think that's the case with Golden Sabre and River 7. Golden Sabre ran and just barely beat River 7 the last time out, but he's only raced 4 times, and Malcolm Pierce is a very good trainer, and shipping the horse down here for Woodbine, I like his chances coming from off the pace in this race, the Commonwealth Turf, with River 7 with a 105 buyer last out after that Golden Sabre race, but I think that may have been helped by the yielding turf. I doubt if we'll get yielding turf at Churchill on Saturday night. The other horse that I liked in here, Winning Cause, is finished behind a bunch of great horses, including Nicky Sandcastle, Syod, 5-iron, and Up with the Birds. So I think Winning Cause has every chance to win this race. But it's a very nice race to spread out in the trifecta. But I'm going to take the 2 Woodbine horses on top.
I'm going to take Winning Cause, and I like the 2 Woodbine horses you mentioned. Frack Daddy a little bit too from the 12 hole, but I don't like that post. So Winning Cause, what I like is big improvement last time. Ran against Older in the Fayette at Keeneland, and didn't run so well in the Phoenix, but came back and ran just a bang-up race in the Fayette, and it was about a 10-point buyer improvement, which I like for a 3-year-old. And then this horse ran twice on the turf up at Saratoga and ran okay, had 1 win, but really is bred to love it. And you think, well, why hadn't he been on the turf before? Well, they were trying to make him into a 3-year-old dirt horse to see if they had one of those. He won the Lexington in the spring, and they're trying to see if they might be able to pursue some of those paths. And I think this horse might well have a future on the grass. So Winning Cause for me with the 2 Canadian horses you mentioned, plus Frack Daddy, and I might throw in an exacta Winning Cause and Dorset for a small shot as well. Dorset at 8 to 1's a nice price. 9th race is the second stake on the Saturday night card. It's the Grade 2 Mrs. Revere, and they're going 3-year-olds on the turf as well. I believe it's a mile and an 8th, if memory serves. Really, mile 16th. Okay, same as the boys. Really well-matched group. I started to go to Pria for Kenny McPeak. I liked the way this horse finished in the race at Keeneland, but I ended up taking a shot with Remember Then for maybe a little bit of a price. This horse, when it won at Keeneland in the spring, I remember the owner of Strawbridge Stable came in to see her run because they really had high hopes for her. Came in to see her run, I think, in an allowance race. And she's coming second off a layoff for Jonathan Shepard. And Le Peru takes the ride, and he's having a good meet since coming back to Kentucky and rides the turf really well. He's a good finisher. So I'm going to take Remember Then, user and Kier and Exactas with Pria. Tapacat's the favorite, but I don't like the 13 post. And Emotional Kitten, the 1, and Nellie Cashman, the 8. So I'd take each one of those and box them in an exacta keying on Remember Then. What about you?
My first impression of this race was I was in love, if you remember, with a horse or the filly named I'm Already Sexy, who came from Arlington and ran the Queen Elizabeth II. And she ran a good race that day. I'm acquainted with the jockey, and he got her in the race, but she didn't have enough finish. But she only lost by 3 lengths to Kitten's Dumplings, who goes on to run the Breeders' Cup. And they really loved her that day. I wanted to pick her in this race, but I took a look at the pace of the race, and I don't think it sets up very well for her because Tapacat, the favorite from the outside, they're going to send her, and she's coming for 13 hole, and I don't like that either. But she's got to go to the lead. I'm Already Sexy needs the lead. I think it sets up very well for a horse that you mentioned named Nellie Cashman. She comes out of she won at Saratoga, even though she was disqualified and placed third. She finished first in Lake Placid. came back and just barely lost in the Valley View, ran really well at Keeneland. At a mile and 16th, I think that the race sets up extremely well for her closing from outside. So I'm going to take Nellie Cashman on top. The horses that you mentioned are all, Priya's got a nice shot. Emotional Kitten's always got a shot with Ramsey. But I like I'm Already Sexy, but I like Nellie Cashman a little bit more. I think it sets up very well for her.
Aqueduct, their feature is the Grade 3 Red Smith, 3-year-olds and up, going long, kind of a mini marathon distance here on the turf. It's the 7th race on their card, not the next to last, but 2 from the end. And a nice big field here, good betting race. Where did you go?
Well, I took my boy Rosario. I was between Imagining and Tannery, and I looked. Rosario probably could have ridden either one because he won on Tannery last out in Canada, the UP Taylor, and won a Grade 1 up there. But Imagining has the right running style here. I think Sue McGahee is better than anybody at getting them ready, and I think he can control the pace from the inside. And I'm going to take him just barely over Tannery. I really like Tannery, but the fact that Joel Rosario chooses to ride for Shug and Alex Solis is going to ride Tannery gives me a little bit of an edge to Imagining. The other horse that I like in here is on the outside for Ramsey, Hyper, who really improved in the Canadian International and ran just behind Joshua Tree, the three-time winner of that race. So closing from way out of it, got a 101 buyer, and the buyer progression here for Hyper is great, 93, 97, 101, which you were talking about a 10-point buyer progression. I like buyer progressions of 3 and 4 and keep moving forward. And if he moves forward off the 101, he's going to win this. But I just don't think he's going to quite get there. I see it coming down to Imagining holding off Hyper at the end with Tannery being right there as well.
Hyper's the one I started to pick because it just looks like he's in career best form, and he does like Aqueduct. He's run well on that turf course. But I went to Imagining as well. I really like the post down on the inside, and Rosario was a big factor for me in picking this mount. And the last race was the best number yet this horse has gotten, not by a whole lot, but it was still the best, so in good form. So Imagining for me, and I'm going to key in exactas with Hyper, with the 5 Sky Blazer, who always seems to finish well and never get there, but the last race was really good off a little bit of a layoff. And then I'm going to also use one with Imagining and Nutello. Horse ran really well in the Sword Dancer and then ran awful next time out. And for Graham Motion, puts him back in this spot. I'm going to think he can bounce back and run better. And so Imagining is the pick for me there, and use him with those other 3 in exacta keys. We'll also look at Hollywood. These other races we've talked about have nice full fields. This one does not. But I ended up taking a price here. It's the 3rd race, the Sharp Cat, for 2-year-olds going a mile in the 16th on the synthetic. And Perched for Doug O'Neill. A little bit of a layoff, so coming off a freshening. And on pedigree, this horse should just absolutely relish stretching out. And he's never, she's never run farther, or he's rather, I can't remember if it's he or she, never run farther than a mile. But Perched, I'm going to take a shot at. And the 2 Bafferts on the inside are the ones to beat, Be Proud and Georgia. So I'll just take an exacta box king Perched with each one of those, and hoping if Perch wins and one of those runs second, you get a decent price. What about you?
The way I handicapped this race is I took the Baffert horses and I tried to beat them, and I couldn't.
Understand
there's only
that.
6 horses. There's only 6 horses in there, and there 2 of them. One of the horses that you chose, Perched, is a maiden. Don't like to bet maidens in a stakes race. The other, the Arthusa, or Arthusa, or whatever, Arthusa, the 3 horse, is also a maiden. Pleasant Miss has had 7 chances and had to break her maiden at 50,000. Then he brought her back in minor stakes races, and she's always right there, but she hadn't gotten there. And then Saintly Joan runs a 32 buyer first out. You got to figure she didn't like Delmar, jumps up to 73, so I don't think she can take that next leap to a stakes race. So I basically eliminated the other 4 horses. I'm going to wind up betting the 2 Baffert horses, probably Georgia on top of Be Proud.
All right. Well, that's the lineup for stakes races this weekend. We'll be back with another edition of the In the Money podcast next week to take a look at the Saturday stakes races around the country, and leading into a big Thanksgiving weekend with a lot of great stakes races all around the country. Best of luck to all of you, and we'll be here to talk with you next week on the In the Money podcast from KeenelandSelect.com.